It's time to talk about our Toronto Raptors. Rainbows, daisies, puppies, all the good things in life. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and Tim Hortons sucks. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms, so get ready to double bang. Not a single bang, always going to be a double bang. Let's talk Raptors. All right, we're talking Raptors. Of course, to do that, I've got to bring in the host of the Locked On Raptors podcast, or one of the hosts of the Locked On Raptors podcast. Sean Woodley is back again for the 10th, 11th year in a row as we talk about this Toronto squad, who continues to confound and confuse at times, especially me. I'm sure I'm not alone, although I know exactly what's going to happen here. Sean, do you know what's going to happen? There's going to be people here that are going to be just all accusatory, saying how much I hate Toronto and how unfair I am and how unbiased I am. So let's just get that. We'll get all that out of the way. Let's get to the first question. Why does Toronto and Canada suck so much? Like, what's your problem? Why are you guys so bad? Why is it just an absolute disaster of an area? Like, what's happening up there?
What do you mean? It's like it's everything. Where do you want to start, man? We got wildfires. We're, of course, the lesser of the two countries that occupy this continent, or the northern part of this continent. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
yeah, no, we suck. We're terrible. We're brutal.
At least you know your place. That's at least you know where you sit. At least you know how everything. And that gives us a whole, like, it's an undercoat for talking about this Toronto team, which nobody respects, nobody covers, nobody talks about, everyone hates, everyone's disgustingly down on at all points. Let's talk about, though, some real basketball stuff, because they've got a team that is very strange. We'll talk about, there's four guys who I expect are going to start. Like, I know people have this idea that maybe they don't, and maybe they do, but I believe it's going to be Quickley, it's going to be Barrett, it's going to be Ingram, it's going to be Barnes. We're going to talk Quickley in a sec. I think he's an interesting thing, but like, all of these guys need the ball. Like, they all need the ball to be successful. Some of them, Brandon Ingram, have shown an ability to be really bad offensively when they don't have the ball in their hands. So how is this going to work? Is Scottie Barnes going to be ramped way down and just be a distributor? Is RJ Barrett going to decide to be a spot-up shooter? That sounds disgusting. Where does Ingram fit in? Like, how do you... Obviously, Ingram's been on this team for 7 months. We've never seen him play. How do you think the offensive hierarchy works?
I think it's going to require some give from everybody, but I think the way the Raptors play, they play a pretty egalitarian style, and I don't know if, like, one guy is going to be the clear usage king on this team. I think it's going to be pretty balanced, and I think it might depend night to night on who the opponent is, what are the matchups, and I think, yes, it's a weird team. The fit is strange. RJ Barrett in particular, I'm sure we'll talk about, is a strange fit at the two in particular just because of the lack of shooting. The defense is actually more of a concern for me with RJ. I think he showed signs after the trade in 2023-24 of being a pretty damn good off-ball player. He shot 39% on threes, and more than anything else, he was like eager and willing to take the wide open threes that came to him. And on top of that, he basically played this like low touch time streamlined game where most of his buckets came as a result of getting a pin down from the corner, catching at the nail with a head of steam, and driving to the bucket with some space around him and scoring. And that was awesome. He had a career best finishing rate at the rim and all of that. And then that changed last year when the team was horribly injured. Immanuel Quickley missing the first 50 or 40 games or so matters. I know people like to do this thing where bad or injured equals bad, but I'm sorry, like, he was injured, he's not bad. And I do think Quickley is kind of the guy who's going to stir the drink for this entire team. I know I spoke very optimistically about him with you last year, and obviously things didn't work out. I think he's in for a big season if he can stay on the floor. And my guess is a guy who averaged 73 games a season before this past year, where a whole bunch of freak injuries befell him. He fell on his butt in the first game of the season and missed a bunch of time. He suffered a baseball injury. He had like a torn UCL at one point. like he had a weird season, and then the team was actively trying to lose down the stretch. I think Quickley is going to be the guy who kind of sets the table for this offense. And I think of all these guys is the one who is most capable of making things happen away from the ball. And I think that means he's going to be a pretty integral part of making this offense make sense.
I agree. Now, we were both pretty high on Quickley last season. I think with good reason. It made sense. And you're right. Like, he busted his ass first game of the season, took a while to come back and had multiple injuries. I thought down the stretch in the games that he did play, even though it was, he was playing on a part-time basis, I thought he looked pretty good. Now, again, I just wanted, I think people don't really understand what he is as a player, because I had someone suggest to me that they just won't start Quickley. Barnes will be the point guard and they'll start Dick to get better space. And I go, you realize that Quickley's a better shooter than Dick, yeah? Like, he's actually the best shooter on this team by a considerable margin, and taking him out of the starting lineup makes the spacing way worse. Like, he is integral. Look, Barnes is probably the best passer, but Quickley's pretty close. Quickley's very clearly the best shooter. And you're right, being injured, being undercut and busting your hip open is not you being bad. And that's the way he played. What did he play? 28 minutes a game? Like, he's not going to play 28 minutes a game. It is going to be harder for him to have as large a share of the ball as what he could have had last season, just because of Ingram being there. But I agree. I think that he is vital to what they do, because if they don't have him, if he's not doing that, who else does it? Like, there's no point guard who can shoot realistically on this team at all. Like, it's him, and then we run into some problems with figuring that out. I guess all this then brings us down to.
Let me just say, Josh, like to the point you made about the point guard thing. Scottie Barnes is not a point guard. Like, he's not a point guard.
This is true.
He is a playmaking forward wing type who can play some small ball five. He's not a point guard. Those who keep on saying Scottie Barnes is a point guard, you're living in 2021. He's a damn good player, and I think he's going to be pretty effective playing next to Brandon Ingram on this team. And I think we saw some positive strides for him playing with Immanuel Quickley last year in terms of their two-man game chemistry. But Quickley's the point guard, full stop. If there's someone who's not starting, it's RJ Barrett. I think he'll start from the jump, but if someone's going to lose his job this season, it's 100% RJ Barrett, the one guy in their starting five who they are not committed to long-term.
Yeah, and that's going to lead us to what we talk about later in the show about the long-term commitments on this team, because it is a weirdly constructed team. Like, Barnes had that big breakout 2 years ago where his rebound rate, his three-point shooting numbers, his block rate all went through the roof, and they all fell back to earth last season. So I don't know. You probably feel this way to a degree. I'm not sure that the Raptors fans do, but like, I still really don't know what he is. Like, I still don't like which one is he. The realistic answer is like it's somewhere in the middle between all of that. But he had these big highs of like, wow, and he's shooting 37%, and he's blocking every shot under the sun. He's grabbing 10 boards a game, and then it came to a more reasonable, like, seven rebounds and one block instead of 1.8 or whatever it was, and obviously 27% from three is terrible, but like, I don't really know where he's at, and it is hard to judge considering the last 30 games of the season were against the worst teams you could possibly have seen, and they tried their best to lose, and they couldn't, but they tried their best by playing AJ Lawson and Jameson Battle 35 minutes a night. So Barnes is an interesting one, but I'm glad you said that about him not being a point guard. He's a playmaker, but they're not. His dribbling skills aren't that level. His shooting is obviously not that level. He's not that sort of a player. I do want to quickly talk Brandon Ingram in this segment here, because I don't know. He's a player that annoys me to a large degree, because of he's one of these guys that the ball is in his hands and you go, look, he's going to get 25, 5 and 5. I go, that's great. That's really good. It means your team's bad if he's getting that, but then you put him in a different role, and I don't really know how he actually succeeds, because we saw him play on Team USA with a bunch of good players, and he was lost. Like, he just couldn't do it. And when he has to play off ball to Zion Williamson, he was sort of lost and he couldn't do it. And then he had to ramp up. He's just a weird player. And I don't really get. You mentioned it. You said, I think that him and Scottie will fit well together. I'm not sure that works. I want you to convince me. How does it make sense? I don't get it.
So I think Brandon Ingram does a lot of the things that Scottie Barnes doesn't do so hot, like a lot better than Scottie does. And I think it's going to push Scottie into more of like a play finishing role where he can work off of Ingram, who, like, say what you will about Brandon Ingram. Dude is a good passer. And I think he's going to be someone who can draw attention in a way that no one on this offense, really outside of Scottie, has shown a capacity to do. And I think that's going to free things up for Scottie as this sort of secondary finisher type. I think Scottie's going to probably be like the two-way type guy in this offense alongside Quickley, with Ingram kind of being, like, again, I don't think it's going to be that he is creating all of the time or anything like that. I do think, like I said, there's going to have to be some give here and some adaptation. And I think what we've heard Brandon Ingram say, in his few media availabilities since coming to Toronto, I do think he's like genuinely open to playing a different brand of ball. And I do think there have been times in his career where you look at, way back when he was an all-star, where he has operated as an off-ball player, been an eager three-point shooter, and he's a damn good three-point shooter when he does it. Like, when he hits his threes, like most of them are coming in the form of catch and shoots, and he's an accurate shooter. And I do think like this isn't going to work unless he's willing to play ball. But I think the way, again, the Raptors play offense is this sort of egalitarian style where it's really all about the system. They're like the closest to the Warriors system you're going to find. It's not Warriors quality players playing it, but I think the way they play is very similar. And it's really just about what's the best shot we can create and how do we leverage the skills of all these players to create the shot for whomever it is. We don't really care who's getting the shot. And yeah, Ingram is going to have to change his ways a little bit to be a part of that. But I do think we have to bake in the escape from New Orleans factor here a little bit. That franchise is a disaster. It's a nightmare. It's been like totally off the rails for years. I think Ingram was excited about a fresh start in Toronto. He chose Toronto over Atlanta when it came down to the two places he could have gone to sign for his new deal. And yeah, he wasn't like loaded with options of where he was going to go, but he chose Toronto over Atlanta. And I think Darko Rajakovic, look, it's a big year for Darko. It's a massive year for him. If it doesn't go well, he could be out of a job by season's end. But I think if there's one thing he's shown during his time with the Raptors, is that he's able to elicit buy-in from his players to do the things he wants them to do. He's a very affable guy. And I think there's a chance that he'll be able to get through to Ingram and just have him be the best version of himself. It's not going to be a 25-5 guy, but can he be someone who's putting up 22, 5, and 6 as this sort of supplementary creator within the team who can bail them out late in games when they need a shot, which has been a huge weakness for them in the past when the system breaks down. I think he's going to help them finish a lot more of the pretty good shots they tend to create. They were top 5 in the league in shot quality last year. They just couldn't hit anything. They were bad in effective field goal percentage because the guys taking the shots were not good players. I think Brandon Ingram is someone who is a good player who hits tough shots and will get some good looks within the system as well. That's how this works. I understand the skepticism for sure, and I was pretty down on the trade when it first happened, but thinking about it more and just sort of thinking of the human factor here with Ingram, it's kind of his last shot really to be a star in the NBA. I do think we're going to see some adaptation. I do think he's going to help the rest of the team kind of level down in their level of responsibility, just kind of do the things they do best without having to be spread too thin.
It's very easy to look at the trade and go, they didn't give up anything in order to get him, which is true, right? They didn't give up hardly anything to get him, which is fair. Again, if you look at every trade on a micro transactional level, cool. It's a great trade. You got a good player, and he is a good player for nothing. My thing is that okay, but it might take away the ceiling of some of your other players there. Does it add anything to it? We'll see. But and then you have future constraints in terms of salaries, and that's where the problem with the trade is where I had it. It wasn't like hey man, I'd rather have Bruce Brown or Kelly Olynyk. That's not the way that I'm looking at that. It's more like now you've got him, so you're committed to this situation, and I'm not sure the fit is perfect. But we're going to come back and talk about someone who is a real linchpin on this team and a key figure. We'll talk about Jakob Poeltl in a sec. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel. August the 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. And for just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you the deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, you're eyeing a long shot division winner, or you're ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. You might be looking at Josh Allen as a back-to-back MVP. Well, you can do that on FanDuel Futures Day. You might want to crown your champion. Maybe you're going to go all Buffalo. You go the Bills for the champion, or you want to parlay your division winner dark horses. Maybe the Miami Dolphins will knock off the Bills in the AFC East. I don't know. Maybe you can put that in on FanDuel Futures Day. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Sean, last year at Media Day, Jakob Poeltl did everyone in the fantasy community a giant favor. He came out and said, yeah, we're not going to try. Wins aren't important. We don't care. We are going to be actively losing down the stretch. And they went, you sure about that? Yeah, but go, no, they're good. No, they're good. And he said, no, we're going to be bad. We're deliberately going to be bad, and we are not going to care. And that is exactly what happened. We talked about this last season, saying that Jakob Poeltl is not the best player in this team, and the contract they gave him, I'm very iffy on what they did with that. But again, he is incredibly key on this team because they have some centers, I guess, like Jonathan Mobo is 6'8" or whatever he is. He looks somehow smaller in person. They drafted Colin Murray-Boyles, who maybe plays center, but also incredibly small. And as we also saw last season, when Jakob Poeltl is not there, things they take a bit of a dive, Sean. So Poeltl on that they've committed to the contract. I'm not saying he's a great player or anything like that. He's a good player. He's a very good player. But he has to be key again because the depth behind him does not really, again, make sense with all the other players on their team. Like, he's the guy that makes sense next to those other players, but there's a lot on his shoulders.
Definitely. I mean, I think he can handle it. He was really good last year, had a career year. I don't think he's going to play quite as much in terms of just like per game minutes as he did last year, because I do think we are going to see a lot of Scottie at the 5. I know I mentioned that before, but if you go back to some of the most successful parts of Scottie Barnes' early career, it was a lot of him playing at center. And I do think that's a way to kind of overcome some of the spacing concerns this team has. And I do think a sort of way this team is going to play is going to be very stagger heavy. We talked about the weird starting 5. I think there are going to be a ton of lineups where they just kind of roll out maybe like Quickley with Jakob Poeltl and a bunch of shooting in between them. And then a lot of Scottie Barnes at the 5 with Brandon Ingram and other guys kind of filling in. And I think that like there are going to be some unorthodox looks here, but yeah, there's no doubt about it. If like, I think they can survive games just fine and piece together 48 minutes a night of solid center play with Poeltl healthy. If ever he goes down, it gets real tricky because you're playing Mamu a lot of minutes and you're asking Jonathan Mobo to do a whole lot where, you know, I'm a Jonathan Mobo freak. It's one of my great personal flaws, of course. But like there's some stuff to like with him. And I think he showed some stuff defensively last year that's like genuinely very impressive. Yep. Offensively, we'll see if he can like, you know, figure out how to dunk again and stuff like that. But yeah, after Jakob Poeltl, any long-term injury, it's trouble. If he's in the lineup for 65, 70, 75 games, I think what they do behind him at center is actually to be kind of fun and interesting and kind of give them a different flavor as a team. Backup centers stink, Josh. And I like give me Scottie Barnes at the 5 over 95% of backup centers in the league. I think that's going to be a totally fine way that they fill in minutes. And yeah, when Poeltl's out there, he really is the linchpin. He's like the anchor of the defense with Barnes. When those two were on the floor last year together, by the way, they were an awesome defensive team, even with some pretty bad defenders around them. They had a defense in all Barnes plus Poeltl minutes, which was like 2,000 possessions worth of tape last year that would have ranked number 2 in the NBA over the course of the full season. And they were playing a lot with Gradey Dick and a lot of rookies. 25% of this team's minutes last year were played by rookies. I just think Poeltl, as a back line for the defense, as a play finisher, as a short roll passer, as an elbow hub, just a really effective player. I think you can expect maybe not the same total output because there's more mouths to feed this year with Ingram on the team, and you hope that they're going to be healthier, but I do think you're going to see him put up really solid, dependable nightly numbers for sure.
Yeah, like he just has to. Like they will be the backup situation and running some of those smaller guys and Mobo and Murray Boyles and those sort of guys is interesting. Like it's useful, and Scottie Barnes playing that role is totally cool. Like it's fine. But if you run into a situation where you're starting Mamu, who again can be productive, like it does turn everything else into a real shit show. It makes it really tough to get by, and we'll see if Jakob has had any more media training or what he says at media day this season about the direction of the team. I'm sure they weren't too pleased with what he said, but like, it's refreshing to have some accuracy or some honesty in what people are saying. How do you view what Murray Boyles' role is going to be for this season? Obviously, he's a rookie top 10 pick. He has some, let's say, iffy shooting ability, defensively really good, but he is undersized. I would expect he's in the rotation opening night in that sort of backup 4 and 5 role. Like how are you seeing that?
Yeah, that's basically how I see it too. I think like off the bench, he, along with Gradey Dick, Jacoby Walter, and Ochai Agbaji are kind of the first 4. We'll see where Jamal Shed fits in. He's a guy who had a nice rookie season, but you know, I think your mileage may vary on just how good a player he's going to be. I think he's like your classic fine backup for a few years type of guy. You know, Jamison Battle, I think, will probably see some run just because he's such a good shooter that he just gets on the floor as a result of it, kind of in the Sam Merrill vein a little bit. Yep. But yeah, I think Murray Boyles, you know, there could be some ups and downs, you know, in terms of his level of favor within the rotation, but I don't really see him being someone who's going to get like extended G League time. I think he's going to be someone who plays some backup 5, plays with Scottie in 4-5 looks, plays next to Poeltl when Scottie's sitting, that type of thing. Again, going to be a lot of fun, interesting transitional lineups this year for the Raptors, where they just kind of stagger in guys. You know, I think we'll see a lot of like Quickley plus Gradey Dick plus ex-shooter, maybe Jamison Battle plus Murray Boyles and Poeltl or Barnes, where they kind of, you know, you don't have a bunch of two-way guys necessarily, but you have guys so tilted towards one end and the other that you find balance across your 5. I think that's where we'll see Murray Boyles. I do think, you know, this is not the Raptors of a few years ago where it was like Gary Trent Jr. and nobody else shooting threes. They have some actual shooting on the roster, even though it's maybe not, you know, sort of loaded up in the starting five. And I do think we'll see some lineups where he's able to kind of work with space, Murray Boyles, and he can kind of do his thing as a driver and a garbage bucket guy and a transition player. I'm pretty excited about him. I know the Raptors are very excited about him. He was someone who I was worried about the fit with the Raptors and why he wasn't top of my board for the team. But pure talent-wise, he was probably the best guy on the board when the Raptors picked ninth. And I think there's a good chance he has a pretty productive rookie season, even though there will surely be some offensive growing pains.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the team and the direction of the team, and some of that will be Murray Boyles related in a sec because there are some changes on this squad. Sean, obviously, Masai Ujiri gone. Bobby Webster in line, I guess, to take over that main decision-making role with the team, but it doesn't feel like much sort of change in terms of the decision-making or the direction because Murray Boyles is the sort of pick that the Masai Ujiri-led front office would have made. That let's grab Operation 6'9" again, and these guys who have some iffy shooting, but they
it's
can
Vision
pass.
6'9", Josh. Come on,
Sorry,
Vision 6'9".
Sorry, Vision 6'9". It's happening again, and that's what we talk about the direction. Because my question that I've got up on the screen is like, are they pushing in this? And you go, well, that's stupid. Are they going to win a title? Probably not. The East is weak, but like again with this team and the way that everything is structured, they are very expensive. All of their players in the starting group are on second contracts. They're not on rookie scale deals. They're all on, a lot of them on close to max money now. And they're all paying a lot of money, and they're all older than you would expect for a team that's as bad as they have been the last couple of years in their position in the lottery. Like they're all 26 or 27 or 28 or whatever they are, and the contracts are there. So they've got to start to make these calls. And again, you're changing your front office, and Darko's on the hot seat. So, if they are, like, I guess they are sort of, they've got no choice but to push in. But like, if they don't, and if we get a Jakob Poeltl, we're not trying again sort of moment, what do they do? Like, who becomes expendable? What sort of things could happen this season if it doesn't work out the way that an all-in team should work out?
Yeah, like I don't think you're going to hear that from Jakob Poeltl day one. I think they want to win basketball games this year. I think that's pretty clearly been stated. And I think trading for Brandon Ingram and signing him to a new deal was basically the indicator of that they're kind of done with this let's be terrible thing. There is a lot riding on it, right? Like if they're bad, then you end up being a team that just performed poorly again with a bunch of guys on long contracts. And how much are you getting for Immanuel Quickley or Jakob Poeltl or Brandon Ingram at the end of the season if you really want to clean house? You might not be able to get much back, so you might be stuck. I think the guy to look at here is RJ Barrett. Look, I think your mileage, I know the mileage varies on him quite vastly across the fan base, across the league. I think he's a fine player. I think he's someone who probably doesn't contribute a whole lot to winning at a very high level. And I think he's pretty obviously the odd man out on this team if things don't work out. You see this team, again, quickly locked in for the next 4 years. Barnes is just starting his new max deal. Ingram just got signed. Poeltl's on the team through 2030. That leaves you with RJ Barrett, who they've pretty clearly telegraphed that they don't think they're going to pay the next contract to him, right? Like there's in trade rumors all summer long. And I do think there's a very good chance that he's moved by the deadline if things don't work with this team on the floor. I'm not ruling out the chance that they do kind of work because I just think collective talent has a way of sorting things out. And I do think I'm pretty high on Gradey Dick taking a bit of a jump this year. I'm pretty in on Jakob Poeltl as a two-way player down the line. I think Colin Murray Boyles is good. Ochai Agbaji is like a perfectly solid eighth man. I think there's enough here that in a bad Eastern Conference, even though the fit's not perfect, I think there is a team here that can win somewhere in the mid-40s and find themselves in the top 6 of what is not a good conference. And if that happens, amazing. If they're a play-in team, I think you'll probably notch it as like a step in the right direction, and you still got to figure out exactly what the long-term pieces are going to be. Ultimately, I think their vision is very similar to what it's been under Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster for years, which is let's just be relevant. Let's play pretty good basketball. And then eventually playing enough good basketball gets us to the point where we can trade our players for better players along with picks. They have all their picks going forward. They now have a bit of a sort of stable of young dudes they could throw into sweeteners in trades. I think we're far from seeing the final vision of what this team is. Wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a big deal at some point next summer if someone becomes available in a league where there's maybe some more financial wiggle room and some more maneuverability for them. Or maybe they find a way to turn RJ Barrett plus stuff into just like a game-changing fit, addition to the team that really works. I was really on the idea of like Cam Johnson, for example, if they could find a way to flip RJ for him at some point, just because the fit would have been so much better with this team than what RJ provides. But that said, like, they'll be able to find bench looks with RJ Barrett playing with other guys. They'll be able to stagger. They might not close every game with RJ Barrett. Just because they start doesn't mean they're beholden to playing those 5 guys 30 minutes a night altogether. That's not how this works in the NBA over 82 games. And so it's not a perfect fit. I think the Raptors, fairly get a lot of crap because the way they've been built is kind of insane. But when you just look at the roster, it's a team with a lot of good players. And if you have a lot of good players, you're probably just going to win a lot of games because that's just how it works in the Eastern Conference. And so I do think they're kind of being, in this world where we fetishize good GMing more than actual good on-court basketball play, I think that they get the sort of raw deal of the projection because the good GMing has been few and far between. I think, though, the team they have now is totally capable of winning some games and fulfilling the objectives of this team. And then, of course, you got to bring in the Rodgers of it all now that they're taking full control. Masai Ujiri got fired for quote-unquote basketball reasons. Yeah. All the people who made decisions under him are still here. So I'm thinking there's maybe something more there, a bit of a power trip, bit of an ego thing with Ed Rodgers, Keith Pelly. You never know when they might go like nuke mode if things don't start well. Do they fire Darko? Do they not hire Bobby Webster to take over? Does this thing go in a totally different direction? But until Bobby Webster's not running the ship, I do think they're going to try to stay this course of be pretty good, be relevant, try to get back to the playoffs, which this team wants to do. This is Toronto. Like, being in the playoffs is a cash cow for any Toronto franchise. Ask the Toronto Blue Jays right now, owned by the same people who own the Toronto Raptors. I think they want to be back in the playoffs, and I do think if that doesn't happen, then, yeah, the heads are probably going to roll. But I just think there's too much collective talent here, and guys who maybe not all in one collective complement one another, but on sort of like 2 and 3 player bases do complement one another, that I do think they'll rack up some wins. They're also tryhards, which helps a lot in the regular season too.
It does. And we saw that with the Indiana Pacers. And you're right. Like, I cop a lot of shit for my, playful nudging about this Raptors team. But, like, the results are there. They're not good, and they haven't been good, and they should be good. And they've committed. The team build is crazy, and I disagree with so many decisions that they've made. But there are still individual good players here, and they've got individually good depth. And Abaji's a good bench player, and guys like Murray Boyles can become that. And Mobo showed a lot defensively, and Walter was probably better defensively than I thought he would be. But like some of the offensive stuff that I was a bit worried about showed its head. Like there's players there. It's just, where is the vision of how it all makes sense? And that's what the question's going to be. But there's no question, Sean, about what the best Raptors podcast is, because that's Locked On Raptors, and you're going to be covering it all for us over the course of this season. So everyone tune in to Locked On Raptors, and thank you again for coming on and talking about my favorite team, the Toronto Raptors.
Anytime, brother. We love you up here. We definitely don't yell your name going to bed every night. Josh!
Never. I'm a huge Toronto guy, and I love everything about Canada at all points. Sean, thank you again. And that's it. That's the Toronto Raptors. You know what to do. You subscribe, you hit the thumb up, you leave the comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.